I'm John McIntyre. I'm Associate Professor of English in the English Department at UPEI, and I'm also the co-editor of this new book, Rereading the New Criticism, which is out with Ohio State University Press. So that's who I am and what the book is.
So let's start off. What's the New Criticism?
The New Criticism was a school of criticism which came to prominence in the 1920s and 30s, primarily in the American South, and it came to hold enormous sway over the academy for about 30 or 40 years, and it was a school of criticism that advocated looking at the text, looking at the text kind of separate from the author's biography, separate from the author's life, and encouraged readers and critics to focus kind of objectively on the poem or the story or the play in front of them, without worrying about kind of what the new critics considered to be the extraneous material of biography and history.
So what is the rereading of it?
Well, the rereading of it is interesting. After the sort of the 1950s and 60s, and with the influx of a lot of new ideas into the academy, the new criticism fell into disfavor as people questioned. As people said, how can we ignore these things? We need to be looking at questions of history. We need to be looking at questions of biography. We need to be looking at questions of identity and power when we think about literature. And so the new criticism came to be seen as this kind of conservative, reactionary way of looking at books. What we aim to do here is to say, wait a minute, the new criticism may have had its limitations, but a lot of what's been since said about it is kind of unfair, and is kind of ignores the fact that in fact the new critics were actually concerned about a lot of these things, like history, like context, like identity. And so we were sort of aiming to give a broader picture of what was actually going on at the time than came to be, than what people started to think had gone on.
So tell me about some of the essays in this book.
Well, there's 10 essays in the book, and they come from a variety of scholars around North America. We just put out a call for papers a few years ago, and a number of people, we probably had about 30 submissions, and we chose 10 of them. And they're all from, leading or emerging scholars in the field. And what they do is they bring their own perspective to the new criticism. And they say, for instance, one of the critics in here argues that, the new critics are not this sort of homogenous, school. In fact, they were very diverse in terms of what they thought about a range of ideas. Another one examines the context between, the connections, I should say, between new criticism and emerging ways of reading online. So another one looks at the implications of new criticism for contemporary ways of teaching in the classroom. So there's a lot of different approaches that people take to sort of, broadening our understanding of what the new criticism was and is.
So you wrote the epilogue?
Yes, I wrote the epilogue and I co-wrote the introduction, and then there's a number of sort of transitional pieces in the volume as well that I co-wrote along with my editor Miranda Hickman, who's at McGill.
So your epilogue, is that sort of a summary, or did you take it in a new direction? What did you do?
No, I actually took it in a new direction there, because there's been a lot of work done in the last couple of years, special issues in journals and a few books out on really the need to return to what is called close reading. And close reading is kind of a way of looking at text closely connected to the new criticism. So what I was doing in the epilogue was to sort of tie what we had done to these kind of new arguments that were being made by some prominent scholars in the field, actually. So to kind of make the lines of connection clear between this book and some other groundbreaking books and studies that are just coming out today too.
Well, John, thanks very much.
Thank you.